Hello and happy Taco Tuesday, my favorite day of the week. I hope that you're having a good week, good start to the day. Where I am, it's 10 a.m., so it's still in the morning. It could be 8 a.m. for you, it could be 9 a.m., it could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know. And we don't always know where everybody's watching from unless you tell us in the comments. So tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Today, I have just a few quick updates to share. I wanted to start off with, for those of you who joined us, you purchased Podcaster's Kit, and you're watching this for the first time. Maybe you're like, I didn't know who this person was, and now you're introduced to me through Podcaster's Kit. Well, welcome to our podcasting community. We are having our live training for Podcaster's Kit next week on the 21st of October. So it's going to be really, really fun. I'm excited about it. I'm always excited. Live trainings just get me fired up. And I think that, doing these weekly lives here is just always, it's just a lot of fun. And it's your opportunity to get your podcast questions answered. And I always love it whenever y'all have questions that are really specific to either what we're talking about that week on the podcast or on the YouTube channel. And I think it's always fun to see what y'all are up to. Are you trying something new? Tell me in the comments. Have you tried something new with your podcast? Are you in the start phase? Are you in the launch phase? Are you growing and marketing your podcast? Tell me in the podcast what is going on. Hi, Monique. So happy that you're here. You're joining us today. This is going to be a lot of fun. So today, I wanted to really start off with, like I said, updating Podcaster's Kit participants. If you joined us, then we will see you next week for our live training. But another update, I feel like I just have a whole bunch of updates that we need to start talking about. First and foremost, I am heading to She Podcast Live in Arizona this week. So we're heading out, or I say we, I'm heading out on Thursday. I say the collective we, because I know I'm really excited to meet some of my podcasting friends. Some of them I've already met in person at Podcast Movement. Some of them I'm meeting for the first time. And if you're attending virtually, please tell me in the comments, because it's going to be so much fun. If you follow me on Instagram, or make sure you're following me on Instagram, because I always like to share the behind the scenes of traveling and what that looks like. And if you have any specific questions about She Podcast, or you want to know what's on the agenda, I'll be sharing all those things, all the different talks that I'm going to. And I always come back with so many ideas. So many ideas. If you haven't watched, I did a recap kind of highlight reel of what I learned at Podcast Movement in August. So if you haven't watched that YouTube video, I would absolutely check it out, because I kind of went to these different sessions. I took a lot of notes. Y'all should see. I'm usually a pen and paper girl, but everybody was talking so fast, and I was taking pictures of slides in my notes app, and I was I don't want to forget any of this. So I have this one note in my phone. It's so long, but it's all the different sessions that I went to, and I'll probably end up doing the same thing at She Podcast. So I know that I'm planning on attending different talks that have to do, my talk specifically, I'm going to be speaking on Friday. So I appreciate good vibes and all the things. That would be really appreciated. But Friday, I'm going to be talking about repurposing content. So if you have any questions about that, I'm going to be using what I do at She Podcast to kind of spin off into other pieces of content. But I'm really excited. I've never been to Arizona before. If everybody's been, if you have any tips, I'm going to be in the Phoenix area. I don't know where to go, what to do. I'm just going to be kind of following along with what some of my friends are doing. I'm not usually the type to go out on my own and explore the city by myself. Maybe if I was comfortable, if I knew where things were, but maybe that's what you're supposed to do. I don't know. I'm going to enjoy, as a mom of 3 little ones, I'm going to enjoy being in a hotel and being able to sleep in. Well, just to be honest, I'm not going to sleep in. I'm in a different time zone. That's it's an hour later than mine. So I'll probably be up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, since I normally wake up at 5. It'll probably I'll be just crazily jet lagged, but it'll be fun. We'll make it through. Monique is episode 10. Her episode 10 launches this week. So exciting. So, Monique, remind me of the name of your podcast. I just remember it was about dating and marriage and different types of relationships. So, remind us, hang on, I remember. Is it the demo with Mo? Oh, I'm going to be so proud of myself if I remembered that. It's something about demo. Why am I remembering demo? Tell me if that's right. I don't know. I'm like, oh, I just put my foot in my mouth. Is that what it is? Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know. Why? Yes. Okay. Yes. I got it. I guessed it right. Okay. Y'all can see I have this vein right here that I'm like, oh, I'm getting nervous. I'm like, I said the wrong thing. That's totally not her podcast, but it was. So yeah, shout out. Y'all go check out Monique's podcast. So dating, engaged, and married objectives. Okay, that's what it was. I was like, I was thinking divorce. I was like, divorce isn't the right D word, so dating is the correct one. Okay, all right. Hi, Nathan. So happy that you're here. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hi, Diane from Nashville. This is so awesome. I'm really looking forward to your live class on the 21st. I really need it. So what Diane is talking about and what I was kind of alluding to earlier is Podcaster's Kit was a special promotion that we just did last week. And what I like to do whenever I do these partner collaborations, I like to come up with content that I've never taught anywhere else. And next week, the training that I'm doing is all about self-sponsored ads, but really just understanding ads in general. I'm going to go and it's called the deep dive of self-sponsored ads, but I'm really going to talk about what ads are, excuse me, what are some kind of like the guidelines, whether you're creating ads for yourself or for someone else. There's kind of some general, I don't like to say rules. I like guidelines. I need to come up with another term because guidelines is so long. Like rules is good because it's a short word. Guidelines feels a little long, but these are kind of some of the things that I tell people whenever they're creating their own dynamic content, or even if you're creating baked in audio clips that you're going to include in individual episodes. It's going to be some of those that'll be super helpful. So I'm glad that you're excited, Diane. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that everybody's here. Today's episode of the Profit Podcast, which if you are brand new here and you've never listened to my show, here it is. I always want to point in the wrong direction. Here it is, the Profit Podcast. We publish new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. And last week's episodes were really good. If you're interested in creating LLCs for your business, or you have questions just about podcasting in general, as it like really goes into the business side of things, the behind the scenes, LLCs, trademarks, taxes, accounting. We touch on a lot of those in last week's episode, so make sure you go check that one out. Then today's episode, we are talking about podcast guest experts. Now, this is something, and if you listen to the episode, I really kind of start off with the story of where this came from. But whenever I was recording this episode, I have multiple people ask me the same thing in one day. And I want you, as a podcast creator, a podcast host, to really let this idea sink in, that you need to pay attention to what your audience is asking you or what they're talking about, because those are clues that you need to create that piece of content. So if I have two people ask me the same question in one day, that's like a ding, 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 like red flag. We need to create a piece of content around this. And so that's how this podcast episode kind of came to fruition. I had someone saying, hey, how can you have the same type of guest on your show more than once, right? Can I have more than one podcast expert on my show? Not podcast expert in the sense like I'm a podcast expert, but a podcast guest expert. So someone, let's say that you have a financial podcast and you want to bring someone in to talk about budgeting. Can you have someone else to come in and talk about budgeting? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we go into the different kind of guidelines. Again, I don't like the term rules. I need to like go into the thesaurus and look for something that's different than rules, but more along the lines of guidelines, but it's a shorter word. If anybody can think of a shorter word than guidelines, that's what I'm looking for. But that's really what I'm kind of proposing is these are some things of how you can look at your podcast interviews and create content that's different. I could interview 10 people that all do the exact same thing and come out with a different episode every single time because I've come up with a short formula of how you can make that happen. And that is what today's episode is all about. Oh man, all these colors blend together. Here, let's change this. There we go. That way it doesn't all the colors are all blending in together. But so if you go to crystalprofit.com/episode 297, this is what you'll see. And you can play the episode right there. But I wanted to come down and show you right here. This is really the highlight of the episode, and it's how I create guest interview questions I talked about in a recent YouTube video. And it's really where some more of this episode stemmed from, was because I don't ask my guests the same questions every time. I try to come up with unique questions for each individual, but not in a way where I have to spend hours and hours doing research and trying to understand my guests. Now, don't get me wrong. Let me go full screen here again. Don't get me wrong, because I think it is important that you understand about your guest. You don't just need to accept, like, sure, come on the show, and not know anything about them. It makes me nervous. If someone doesn't send me their bio or a link to their website, like, I can't fully come prepared to an interview if I don't know anything about this person. It makes me really nervous. And I have to go on a deep dive of wait, who are they? Where can I find them? Am I stalking them on Instagram for a few days? Am I going to their YouTube channel? Am I going on their email list? There's some detective work that I have to do if I don't know anything about a guest, which is why I really like to have someone's bio. I like to have their social media handles if they're active on social, their YouTube channel, but their website is really where people find more information about you. We're going to go off on a short tangent, just a little bitty one for a second, because again, I have been seeing the question more and more, do I need a website for my podcast? And I know why people are asking this. I have built multiple websites on different platforms. It's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. If you have no idea how to build a website, it's confusing, it's frustrating, and it's just a little overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing. I will 100% back that thought up. And I don't encourage people that are brand new to podcasting, brand new to the online space. I don't tell them, you need to start a podcast and have this just grandiose, I was going to say grand and grandiose. That's the right word, right? See, I always try to use really big words. I just need to stick to the vocabulary, Crystal, just stick to what you know. But people will tell me I need this beautiful website. And I tell them, yeah, that's a great goal. That's something to shoot for, but you don't need that to just get started, okay? We don't need to have thousands of dollars to have this incredible website. And where a lot of this stems from is other podcasters. Usually you're looking at a podcast that you love. You love this one podcast, and they have this incredible website, and they have all these wonderful things. Maybe they have a whole team of people behind them, or maybe their budget is unlimited when it comes to how much they could spend on creating a fantastic website. But there's no need to put that kind of pressure on yourself to have an incredible website. Okay? That's the first thing I wanted to say. However, I love the idea of every podcast having a space to live. It doesn't have to have its own website. If you have a website, I recommend having at least a page on your website dedicated to your podcast. That is the bare minimum in my mind, is to have a website, have a page dedicated to your podcast page if you don't want an entire website just for your podcast, if that sounds like a lot to manage. And the reason why I say all of this is because if you aspire to guest on other people's podcasts, you're going to need a website. You really are. Because I think that there's a different perception of people who solely run their business on social media, which if you've, there was blackouts recently of all the social media stuff. So that's oh, please don't do that. Please don't have everything live on social media. But if you have a website, even if it's bare bones, even if it's something so simple, it's important because someone like me, if you're trying to be a guest on my podcast, I'm going to do some digging because I believe it's important for me to have guests that are aligned on my show. And I want to make sure that they, one, know what they're talking about. Two, they are a good fit for my audience. And three, that they're not just someone spamming me or someone that's like just making stuff up to be on a podcast. So that's my, I'll step off of my little soapbox. It's a big soapbox. Let's be honest. It's not a little soapbox, but let's just, yeah. There's always Podpage. This is another, I don't know if it would just be considered a website platform or a podcast website platform, but this is something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. I have no experience with Podpage. Diane, I need to go ahead and do a YouTube video on Podpage and how to use it. But this is something that I have heard a lot recently. If you're a Buzzsprout user, you could use your Buzzsprout website, which you can go check out my videos on YouTube. I have a whole playlist. If you're a Buzzsprout user, I have a playlist of almost 20 videos of different ways that you can use Buzzsprout, from your website, dynamic content, how to upload episodes, just all the different marketing tools that they have. So absolutely go check those out. But there's resources. There's no reason for your podcast to not have a website, even if it's super simple, because people are looking for it. And I think that it's just kind of commonplace now that if you have a podcast, having a website isn't that much of like an extra ask for you to go above and beyond to have one created, because most hosting providers offer even just a simple solution for you to create one. I have to have someone on Fiverr do it. I made sure that English was their first language. Okay, so she is talking about creating a website. Is that what you're talking about, Diane? Are you talking about creating one for Podpage? I think that this comment was before your Podpage one. So I'm assuming you're talking about a website. But yeah, a website is it's super important, especially if you're going to be kind of the forward-facing host of your podcast, because people are going to want to learn about you and know more about you. Good morning, Angela. So happy that you're here. We are just talking about today's, podcast episode that is all about podcast guest experts. How awesome is this, y'all? Look, it's almost the exact, it is like the exact color. I have a color, obviously, that I am just totally attracted. I mean, it blends in. It totally blends into that. I have a color. It's, it is what it is. It's actually like a blend, like my brand color. If you look up here, I always point the wrong way. It's more of like a greenish blue, but it's not teal. But I like this color too, obviously. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's the first time I've seen. It's like legit the exact same color. Oh my gosh. Well, that's really all I have to share with y'all today. If y'all have any questions, post them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. But really, I just wanted to share with you about today's podcast episode, and I have a really fun interview coming up on Thursday. Oh, I don't always tease out about interviews, but because I'm going to be at She Podcast, I think I'll have more to teach about batching content. I have been a batching queen the last week and a half, because knowing that I'm going to be out of town from Thursday to Sunday, I was like, oh, I don't want to work. I don't want to do things. Like, I want to be fully immersive in the experience of being in Arizona with a lot of other podcasters. I want to, go to dinners and like talk to people and really network, and creating a whole bunch of stuff while I'm there isn't fun. I think it was the learning experience from going to Podcast Movement, and I didn't batch a whole bunch before I went. And I regretted a lot of it. I was like, oh my gosh, when I got back the next week, I was super stressed out. So I've been batching a ton of content. This week's episode on Thursday, the interview is with Veronica and Steve over at Pod Sound School. So these are podcast experts, YouTube experts. They are so much fun. Like, I highly recommend go check them out on YouTube. They're so much fun. They're so much fun. The interview that we had was awesome. I love watching their videos because they make it really fun. And it was just a fantastic conversation all around. So that is coming up on Thursday. Be on the lookout for it. It's going to be on the Profit Podcast. So if y'all have any questions, post them in the chat. Okay, my website is for my business. I'm a podcast manager. Okay, that's right. That's right. So Diane was saying she had someone on Fiverr do it. And I think that, going back to Diane, we'll just use her as an example. If in the future Diane wanted to guest on other podcasts to really promote her services or what she offers her clients, if she were to pitch me and say, hey, I want to come on your podcast and talk about X, Y, and Z, right? She wants to come on the show to talk about what she does. My default is I'm going to go look at her website. I don't necessarily I don't first thing oh, I want to go look at their social media. That's kind of secondary in my position as the host of my show. I want to know, are they actually doing what they're telling me that they're doing? So I've talked a lot recently about podcast pitching mistakes. So if this is something that you're doing either now or even next year, if that's your aspiration for 2022 is to get on other podcasts, then I really recommend sitting down and looking at what would people do if I wanted to be a guest on their show, what is the kind of sequential order of what they're doing. I send them information about me. This is who I am. This is why I'd be a perfect fit for your podcast. Then they're going to say, okay, I want to go look at their website. I want to go look at their podcast. Maybe you have your own show that you can send them, but start thinking about these things now, because if someone, I get pitches all the time. Every single week I get pitches and I delete some of them. I delete a lot of them because I'm like, they're very self-serving and wouldn't be of service to my audience and the information that they want to know. So they either get deleted, they get unread, or, they just get thrown into the mix of everything else. I don't even reply to them. I don't, because I'm like, this doesn't tell me anything about how you can serve my audience. And therefore, if that's not the first thing on your mind, then I don't think you're a good guest for my podcast. And I know that this is totally subjective. It could be different for other hosts. Maybe you just really want this one expert to come onto your show. That's fantastic. But I'm really about people that will offer something to my audience. It's not even in service to me. I mean, if I learn something new too, that's fantastic. I get really excited about those interviews, but I want to know first and foremost that my guests have something to offer my audience. And even if it's been a topic we've already discussed before, I'm up for it. I'm up for listening and hearing what they have to say. So don't shy away from having more than one guest expert on your podcast. Okay, Monique says, are websites a necessity? So I believe that they are, but I don't think that there's something that you have to have on day one. So I know you were just saying that episode 10 launches this week. That is fantastic. If you have the ability to, and Monique, I'd be curious to know who your podcast platform is, who your hosting provider is, because there's a lot of them that offer a website. Like I said, Buzzsprout offers this to all of their users. If you're a paid user and you have your account with Buzzsprout, you have access to a website. And it's not the fanciest thing that ever lived, but it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome for a website that you didn't have to develop. You didn't have to do coding. You don't have to do anything else. Okay, yeah. So Monique, you have Buzzsprout. I am going to go to show you a YouTube video that you need to go check out, because I literally go through, let me see, I literally go through all of this information. Okay. Where is it? Oh, okay. So you have the website with Buzzsprout. Okay, perfect. Because this is information. Where is it? I have 2 or 3. This is the one I wanted to show y'all. Oh, I shouldn't have clicked on it. Oh, now it's playing things. All the things are happening. Hang on. So we are here. Oh, we're not sharing the right screen anymore. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. So in here, I have a playlist on my YouTube channel that is literally just Buzzsprout videos. I have 19 videos. I thought I said I have almost 20. I was right. It was almost 20 videos. If you scroll down, there is one right here that, y'all, you can literally go buy a domain. I use Google Domains for $12 a year. For a whole year. It is $1 a month for me to pay for a custom domain. And what I'll do is I take that domain and I point it to my Buzzsprout website because it's awesome. I think it looks great. I've done videos on how to do that. I have other videos. Here's another one, podcast website, how to create one with Buzzsprout. There's another video, if you look on my channel, about creating a website for your podcast. So, Monique, the short answer, is a podcast website necessary? Yes, but I don't think that it's something that you should hold off launching your podcast, which I know you already have, but for anybody else that's listening and you're like, I haven't launched my podcast yet, do I need to wait to launch my podcast before I have a website? No, not at all. Not at all. I think it's more important to get your show out there because you're going to be learning things, right? You're going to be learning so much. And I'm sure everybody that's here that's already put their podcast out there, you probably know so much more now that you've launched your podcast than you did before you launched it. So I encourage you to put your podcast out there and then explore options for having a website. And I think it's perfectly fine to even say on your podcast, like, hey, connect with me on social. We're working on getting our website up where you can, give us your email address and be put on our weekly newsletter if that's something that you're doing, or how you can look up other resources that we have, or our products, our books, our events. Like, I am so much entrenched in the thought of it's important to really serve your audience by creating products and services that are catered to them. And I know that's not the only way. But it's my favorite way. I love that I can generate income, make money with my podcast by endorsing a lot of my own products and services and affiliate promotions. Y'all, I don't have brand sponsors for the podcast. I don't have someone that's paying me month after month saying, hey, we want to sponsor your podcast. I don't. That's the goal, right? That's the goal one day. But until I get there, I've managed to create other streams of revenue by creating courses, writing books, having events, having workshops. And I think that this is something you can do as well, which is why I love teaching these things to you, because I think it's important. I don't like the idea of people saying, well, you have to have millions of downloads before you can monetize. Nope, not true. Not true. I have tons of friends who make a really decent living with their podcast by just endorsing affiliate promotions or just endorsing a course that they have. And it's easier to do those types of things if you have a central location to point them to, which is like my way of coming all the way back around to your website. Is a website necessary? Yes, for many reasons. You can do lead generation, which is how I build my email list, is with my website and the different free resources that I offer. I love being able to say, hey, go to crystalprofit.com/episode 297, because that's today's show notes. Go to today's show notes and you can see all the resources we talked about. Because I have a real serious question for anybody that's watching. I'd love for you to tell me in the comments, do you read, if you're listening to a podcast, do you read the actual episode description that is there? And I'm not talking about the first 2 or 3 lines. I'm talking about the entire thing, because it's recently come to my attention that I've seen more and more people spending lots of time on their episode description. By lots of time, I mean hours crafting this long episode description. I'm not talking about what lives on your website. I'm talking about what you see on your phone. Do y'all read these? I would love to know, because I don't. I'll be very honest. I don't read people's episode descriptions. I look at the title, which is why titles are important. I look at the title. I will look at maybe the guest, if the guest is on the show, and that's about it. That's about it. But these are just my listening habits. This is why I'm so curious to see what other people do. But hearing that people are spending hours and hours on their episode descriptions, I think that time would better be spent creating content elsewhere, maybe on a website or, even on social media, because I just don't really see that people read as much of those. Okay, so Diane has a great question to follow up with that. Isn't it good for SEO? It is, but honestly, unless you have a strong base of SEO for your whole podcast, it's going to be a challenge. Like the title, and this was actually, I'm going to have to go look it up. So Buzzcast, who they are the Buzzsprout, the people that are over at Buzzsprout, they have a podcast. It's called Buzzcast. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Because they talked about this recently. And Diane, I would love for you to go listen to this. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to take myself off. Where was it? I think it was this episode right here. Oh, I'll have to see. But they talked about the different... No, it's not that one. I want to find this. Because they talked about the importance of... Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. Oh, here it is. So it was a long time ago. So go listen to this episode. So Buzzcast, it's in episode 56, The Truth About Podcast SEO. Because what they talked about is there was a whole write-up in Pod News about SEO in podcast apps. And what he talked about was a lot of the description, it is read by the bots, right? The bots that do all the crawling from Google and all the other search engines. They do a lot of crawling across your podcast information, but at the end of the day, the title is the one that is the most important. Everything else is secondary. That is the thing that I took away from it. So like from our experiment, we listed the apps, like all these things. They have all these different tags. And this may be a little too like, oh my gosh, my head is exploding. And like, I don't know. What's really the most important, let me see that they have it in here. The description of your podcast is actually the thing that's most important. So this is where I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive. So anyone that's brand new, just listen. Maybe this is something you can come back and watch later. But a podcast description is the whole, like what you use to set up your podcast in Buzzsprout or your podcast host. That is the name of your show, what it's about. Those are the two biggest things that is going to index your podcast in the Apple Podcast and the Spotify's and all the big players. Then after that comes the episode, the individual episodes. Those are kind of secondary. So you want to make sure that you have the keywords of who you're trying to reach in your podcast description. Then you have your episode descriptions and your episode titles. Your episode titles are what I was talking about. Those are important. The episode titles, because I've seen time and time again where my podcast will pop up in Google, but y'all, it's because I have a website. It's not just because it's not showing up every time from Google Podcast or Apple Podcast in Google when someone searched for a keyword. It's usually because I have a podcast website or have a website and I will put my podcast show notes on there, and Google is looking at that first and foremost, not my podcast episodes. So I hope that wasn't like too much of like a deep dive on SEO, but it is important, Diane, to circle back to what you're saying. It is good for SEO. But at the end of the day, the episode description kind of falls at the lower end of everything. And I think at the end of the day, it's better off living on a website than it is in an episode player. Because yeah, this is what Monique says. I don't read them. Titles and maybe the first line of a description. So and I think that's kind of the consensus for a lot of people. And usually that's a good thing. Maybe Monique is referencing she's subscribed to other podcasts and she's like, I don't need to read them. I just love the show. This is honestly my like behavior is I subscribe to shows, and then whenever I see a new episode's out, I look at the title and I think, I got time for that one. I want to listen to that. Or there's a particular, if you follow me on Good Pods, I'm on Good Pods, and you can literally see all the podcasts that I listen to. But on Good Pods, it'll show you, I listen to Life is Short with Justin Long. He's an actor, comedian, like he's super funny, but he always has really interesting guests. But I don't listen to every single one of his episodes. I just listen to the ones of the celebrities or the actors or the authors that he interviews that I'm interested in. So I'm actually in the middle of, I started one about Stanley Tucci. He talked to Stanley Tucci today, which I love. He's so funny. Like, I just remember him, y'all. Oh my gosh, what was this? Was this 101 Dalmatians? I think that was the one where he had the boots. Like, I just remember him from the 90s. Like, the movies from the 90s that I watched that I'm just like, oh my gosh. This is when I first fell in love with him. He was in The Devil Wears Prada. Like, so funny. So many movies that I love. So I will listen to that episode. I didn't read the description. I just saw his name in the title and I was like, oh, I can't wait to listen to that. Done. Like, I was sold. So hopefully your listeners will have that same reaction of loving the content that you're producing. Maybe they'll see the title or they'll see the interview that's up there and they'll say, I don't even care what this one's about. I just want to hear, I think that this will be a great conversation. So that feels like a really long answer, but I hope that was helpful to everyone. So Jacqueline says, getting ready to start my podcast. How do I get the word out there that my show even exists? Great question, Jacqueline. And this is a very, very common question, especially for people who don't have a large following or a large audience elsewhere. So what I always recommend is starting with your immediate network. So friends, family, colleagues, whoever it is, then you start telling them like, hey, I'm starting this podcast and I would love it if you would share with other people that might be interested in this topic. So Jacqueline, I'd be curious what your topic is going to be about and who like that would appeal to in your immediate network, and start saying, hey, we're launching on this date. This is actually like the secret. This is the secret. If anybody's watching and they haven't launched their podcast, this is the secret to it. You have to decide on a launch date and start talking about it today. So even if you're launching in January 1st, 2022, start talking about it today and saying, my podcast is coming out. Talk about it on your social media, talk about it on your email list, talk about it on your website, talk about it wherever you have different channels that could reach potential listeners that would listen to your show. Start talking about it. Start talking about it now. Even if you're like, I haven't even bought my mic. I've never even recorded my first episode. I don't even know what the name of it is. It's okay. Just start talking about it. The sooner you start talking about what you're creating, what you're doing, people will just all of a sudden get curious. They will. The people that will listen to your show, they will be curious. I remember, and this is still my most downloaded episode of the Profit Podcast, when they first announced that they were doing the Office Ladies podcast, which if you've been around here, y'all know, like this is my favorite podcast, all about The Office. It's so much fun. I love listening to it. I did a whole case study about it. They started talking about their podcast at least 6 weeks before they launched it. It was everywhere. They were guesting on other podcasts. Which I'm sure they had a big budget to start promoting it because they have a whole studio behind them. So maybe this isn't the best example, but it's one that is really top of mind because I learned so much. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I have the case study about the Office Ladies podcast. Go listen to it. It was really good on how I watched their launch unfold and what it looked like. But the way that you can get it out is deciding on a launch date, start telling people about it, put up a podcast trailer like ASAP. Even if you're not launching until January, again, you can put a trailer episode up that says, hey, my name is Jacqueline. I'm the host of whatever the name of the podcast is. We are officially launching on January 1st, 2022. Here's what our podcast will be about and a little bit about what you can expect. I hope you join us whenever we launch this show. Period. The end. It doesn't have to be long. I have tons of content on my YouTube channel about how to create a podcast trailer. If anybody is in the the launching phases. I have tons of content that would be really helpful on guidelines on how you can do it and what it could look like. But the main thing is start talking about it now. And if you have time, like if you're not launching until January, then you have some time to start guesting on other podcasts, or maybe doing some, Instagram lives with other people, or Facebook lives, or YouTube lives, or start reaching out in your network and saying, hey, I really want to start this podcast. This is when I'm launching it. Like, could we have a conversation on your platform where, it's going to really hit on these topics? And I think that your audience would be interested in it. So I hope that helps. I don't want to lose anybody's questions. I saw another one. Let me see. Monique says, what do you use to build your email list? I don't know that I said that earlier, but I use ConvertKit. So you can try out ConvertKit. Go to crystalprofit.com/ConvertKit. I'm an affiliate for them. They're awesome. I've used them since 2017. That's when I started my email list. I used MailChimp in the beginning, and then I quickly switched over to ConvertKit, and I've been using it ever since, and I love it. They actually just did a really big update. They're constantly iterating on just what their user interface, user experience is like, and I really like it. There's a lot more analytics and statistics that are in there, so I highly recommend ConvertKit. It's really good. I call them my pod posse, my friends, family, or friends of family. Yeah. So definitely to start asking people. And another fun thing that I think is so simple, people often overlook it, is just telling people in your beginning episodes, like, hey, ask them to subscribe, ask them to leave a review. I think those are kind of defaults that are really easy asks to make from the very beginning. But also saying, if you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on social media. Tag me, and I'd be happy to, share it with you. But I just want to know that we're doing good things on the podcast. You could also say, if you enjoyed this, text it to a friend. I know, like I said, I listen in Good Pods. It's like my favorite listening app. It's my default app that I go to. I like that there's like a copy feature, so I could copy it and paste it into a text message, and I wanted to do it. So Jacqueline, let me go back to your question again, because you're getting ready to start your podcast, getting the word out. Another fun way is to do a giveaway. I have a podcast episode and a few YouTube videos on doing a podcast giveaway. That's another fun way to get the word out. If you do a giveaway on social and you say, hey, tag 3 friends or tag 2 friends or tell 5 friends about the podcast, and you'd have to have some sort of guidelines on how you would measure that working. But I have some content around doing a review giveaway. That's also a lot of fun, and it really helps. It helps get your podcast kind of known from the beginning. It exposes you to new audiences, and it's just a fun way to kind of give back. It doesn't have to be anything like monetarily really, really expensive. You could give away 5 Amazon gift cards, Starbucks or something like that. You could do Amazon if you wanted to, but something that's tangible, but also something that is of interest to your audience. So if they'd be into something else, then that's something to consider. Or Jacqueline, if you have a business or a service, you could offer a free service. You could offer a free, I don't know what it is that you do or what your topic is, but that's also fun, something fun you could do. Maybe keep them up to date, like, hey y'all, I just bought my mic. The next post is, hey everyone, I just decided on my host. Yeah, I think that the behind the scenes work really well. And this is me as a consumer. I love to see the people that I'm following on social, anytime they share a behind the scene, kind of like the messy middle or the messy beginning, I love to share, like, oh my gosh, y'all, I just totally flopped. I messed up. I tried to record my podcast and I said the wrong name. I introduced myself the wrong way, or, just something that shows the humanity in what you're doing, but also that you're trying and you really want to create something of value for your audience. And then again, ask them to share it, ask them to tell someone about it, but keep that date top of mind. I really think it's important, especially if you have one that's easy to remember. I'm actually coming up in just a few days. I'm really excited on the anniversary of my book launching. So I launched a book last year that it's called Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. And I need to put up here in the banner. Let me put Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. Oh, see how everything's shaking? Thebestpodcastbook.com. Okay. So, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. This is the book. You can go to thebestpodcastbook.com to check it out. But I launched it on October 20th, 2020. It was such an easy date to remember. It was on a Tuesday. I remember I picked a Tuesday because that's what worked for me. And I just kept saying, it's coming on 10/20/2020. It was so easy for me to say. So I recommend, and I don't often talk about this, but if you can pick a launch date that's easy for your audience to remember, it's going to be easier for them to talk about it, to share about it, and, easier for you to say, honestly, because I'm like, I don't want to forget what date I'm launching. So the more that you can find a date that's a little bit simpler to say, a little bit easier to remember, then it's helpful. But I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary next week. That's so crazy. I cannot believe it's already been a year. I'm already working on another book, which I'm just like, am I crazy for doing this? I don't know. But definitely pick a date that will work really well. I've been talking to most everyone. I have a radio show. I had a radio show in 2014. Loved it. My family has been saying do it, but my horse rescue took precedence. Now I am focused. Still have my rescue. So I think that it's really cool that you used to have a radio show. I'm curious if you have other people on social that are kind of still connected in that space, where you could say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm launching. I'd love your support. And on launch day, could you share my podcast with, people in your network? Or, if I write up something, would you mind sharing it in your weekly newsletter? There's a lot of different ways that you can get the word out about your show. It's just a matter of deciding where to spend your energy, because even if someone has a huge platform, it doesn't mean that they're going to have your ideal listener. So it's important to really focus on maybe even the more niche, like smaller audiences, but they're going to have an audience that would really be interested in what you're creating. So, thank you so much, Diane. She said she already bought the book. Thank you so much. And then the show is about inspiring to understand each other. Each of us has their own answers. Show about empowering oneself, metaphysics, energy medicine, UFOs, hypnosis, mind-body medicine. Okay, so this sounds like a little plethora of a lot of different things. So I would recommend finding other podcasts if you really want to get the word out and you're like, I'm dedicated to having a big launch, or you're dedicated to growing and having your podcast really go out there, like out with the bang for a big launch. I would look up other podcasts that talk about these same topics and reaching out to them. The worst that they could say is no, we're not interested. But I think that it's really cool because most podcasts are looking for guests. They're usually looking for other guests. Not all shows do a bunch of solo episodes as much as I do, come to find out, which is kind of funny because I think solo episodes are so fantastic to have. But I think that other ones that are about metaphysics, energy medicine, UFOs, hypnosis, like all of these, empowering yourself, start looking for those podcasts, maybe even ones that you listen to, and say, hey, I'm launching a podcast whenever your launch date is, and say, hey, I'd love to come onto your show and tell your audience a little bit about who this is for, why it would benefit them, why they should listen to it. And that's a great place to start. Yes, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Yes. I'm so glad that you're here, Jacqueline. This is so much fun. If anybody else has any other questions, type them in the chat. We're going to be here for just a few more minutes. But My mind really focuses on podcasting, marketing, and connection. And when I say connection, I say it's with your audience, it's with the listener. And I think that a lot of it is stemmed in, and I have had several coaching calls last week with clients and students in our community, and the same topic came up more than once. And again, going back to what we were saying earlier, don't ignore the things that keep coming back up, the topics, the ideas that keep coming back up over and over again, because there was a recurring theme that I had to remind the people that I was speaking with to keep it simple. And we often overlook this one tiny thing that could really change so much about your own marketing, and that is paying attention to what you do. This is my secret behind my marketing is I ask myself when I find a really awesome podcast, I say, why do I love this? Why? Like, why do I love listening? Why do I cannot wait until my Wednesday workout to listen to the latest episode of The Office Ladies. It is literally a habit that I've had for more than 2 years at this point. Like, they're coming up on their 2-year anniversary. And I think about it's something I do every Wednesday. I feel off. My week is thrown off if I don't get to listen to this podcast. And I think about how can I replicate what they do in their own way to my show and my listeners. I love the idea. I have so many people that will tell me, because I have another show. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I have the Potty Report. This is my daily podcast. And it's 5 minutes or less. It's Monday through Friday, 5 minutes or less. It's real quick tips. It's rants. It's tough love. It's just me sharing random stories about my business or what I'm doing. And I love it when people tell me, oh yeah, I listen to the Potty Report podcast when I'm getting ready in the morning, or when I'm drinking my coffee. I'm making my coffee in the morning and I just turn it on because it's so quick. It's easy to listen to. I listen to all of those takeaways because it's helpful for me to understand, but also it's kind of what I envisioned people doing when I created this show. It's what I wanted. I wanted something short, quippy, something that like people would just put a smile on their face or say, oh my gosh, Crystal's ridiculous with all of her crazy ideas or the different things that she's doing right now. But I really pay attention to what I do as a listener of podcast, but also what people in my audience are telling me that they do while they listen to my show. So that's like the not so secret behind the secret of marketing. It really is. Pay attention to what you do in your own listening habits, in your own consuming and your own buying habits. Like, what are you doing? What compulses you to listen to a podcast? What makes you go look at someone's show notes? What makes you go follow someone on Instagram or go watch their YouTube videos? Ask yourself these questions. And this is where journaling, for me, this is my go-to source of creativity. It plays a big role because I can just ask myself, why do I follow certain people? Or why am I on this person's email list? Why am I obsessed with their content? And as those ideas pour out of me, it could be because, and it's funny because Jacqueline used some of the words that I often look for: integrity, caring, like just being encouraging. Maybe they're funny, maybe they're silly, maybe they're just like a breath of fresh air, right? I was talking to someone who was going through my friends program. So shout out to May Kay. She's one of my good friends, May Kay Sang, and she is doing a lot of work right now with visibility and creating content that is for introverts. She's like, I am an introvert to my core, but I still think it's important for us to be visible. And I love this about her because I think that it just goes to show she's just a breath of fresh air. Like, she is someone that I just look at her. I love listening to her voice. It's so calming and soothing, but she's a very genuine person. And it's what draws me to her and why we're good friends and why I love, like, we're always in the DMs, like chatting, and it's great to catch up with her when I get a chance to. But that's what initially drew me to her. I wanted to know more about this person and how she thinks so deeply and how she cares so much about the people in her community. So ask yourself, why am I attracted to the people that I enjoy following, and maybe even the people that you don't like following. Maybe there's some information there too that you're like, man, I want to make sure I don't turn my audience away like I was from this other person. I'm not going to call people out, but I have many stories, many stories of podcasts that I've tried listening to over and over again, and I just can't do it. I can't do it. Sometimes it's the host's voice, sometimes it's their message, sometimes I just feel like, oh, this person is not genuine, and I can tell. Like, you can spot it from a mile away. They're not genuine in what they're saying. And so I think I never want to have someone in my audience have that same reaction. It's really important to me. Like, my values when it comes to my business, Profit Media, and the things that I do is I want to act from integrity. So again, Jacqueline, thank you so much for your comment. I love to be consistent. This is a very, very big just principle value for me. And also, I just want to show up and have fun. Like, I know that's so simple, but I have to have fun in the things that I'm doing. Otherwise, it's not fun. I mean, I know that's what a simple concept, but it's so true. I want to have fun in the content that I'm creating because it's what keeps me coming back. It keeps me excited about the things that I'm doing. So I feel like we're just on the soapbox, off and off, off and off, off and off. So I'm so glad that you appreciated that, Monique. And for anybody else that's watching, thank you all for hanging out with me today. I'm actually going to sign off. I need to go turn my fan on. I was real ambitious with this 3/4 length sleeve. But y'all, fall at Houston, Texas. Yeah, it's like we're willing it to happen. I'm like, please bring on the cold weather, but I'm regretting not turning the fan on. I'm sweating, and now I gotta go put on my tank top. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. I will keep you updated. So go follow me on Instagram. Let me put my handle in here. If you are not following me right now, it's Crystal Profit TX. Follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be sharing behind the scenes updates from She Podcast Live. Like I said, I've never been to Arizona. If y'all have any recommendations for where I should go, what I should do, tell me. I can't promise that I'm going to go do them because, like I said, I don't have a full idea of what my whole schedule is going to be like. But I know that it's going to be a lot of fun to see some of my other favorite podcasters. So thank y'all so much for hanging out. Go follow me on Instagram. Come see what we're doing at She Podcast, and I will see y'all next week, next Tuesday, same time, same place, and that's all I have for y'all. So keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Bye, y'all.